Good morning, dear friends, and welcome to this sacred gathering in the heart of St. Peter's Square, Vatican City, on April 21st, 2025, where the first rays of sunlight are casting a golden glow over these ancient cobblestones, mingling with the faint scent of spring flowers and the soft tolling of St. Peter's bells. As we stand in the glow of Eastertide, a season of resurrection now tinged with sorrow. For just hours ago at 7:35 this morning, our beloved Pope Francis passed into eternal rest at the age of 88 in the humble Casa Santa Marta, shortly after celebrating the Easter Mass, leaving behind a legacy of love and service that we'll honor today by delving deeply into his annual letter from June 29th, 2022, a document that captures his spiritual vision, while reflecting on the profound symbolism of his passing on this day of new life. Let's immerse ourselves in the annual letter Pope Francis wrote on June 29th, 2022, on the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul, a document that serves as a spiritual guide, a call to action, and a testament to the core of his pastoral vision, woven through three profound themes: missionary zeal, devotion to the Virgin Mary, and a humility that defined his life and ministry. Themes that resonate even more deeply today as we reflect on his passing on this Easter morning. We'll start with the letter's invocation of Mary, where Pope Francis writes, "We long for our love in this earthly life to be united with the Mother of Christ, the Virgin Mary, immediately establishing her as the spiritual anchor for the Church's mission," a theme that reflects his lifelong devotion to the Immaculate Mother, whom he often described as his guide in leading the Church toward her Son. This isn't merely a devotional gesture, it's a theological framework for mission. He urges the faithful to always pray at the beginning and end of every apostolic endeavor, and to entrust our missionary work to the Immaculate Mother, suggesting that missionary efforts must be rooted in a Marian spirituality, a reliance on Mary's intercession to ensure that all actions lead to Christ. This emphasis on Mary as a mediator reflects his belief that the Church's mission is a communal journey, guided by the Mother who stood at the foot of the cross, a belief he lived out through his frequent visits to the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, where he would pray before the icon of Salus Populi Romani, a practice he continued even in his final weeks, despite his frail health, as a testament to his trust in Mary's maternal care. Historically, this devotion aligns with the Church's tradition of Marian spirituality, seen in figures like St. Louis de Montfort. But Pope Francis adapts it for the modern Church, emphasizing Mary's role in uniting the faithful across cultures and continents, a unity he sought to foster through his global outreach, such as his visits to conflict zones like Iraq in 2021, where he prayed for peace under Mary's intercession, showing that this theme of the letter was not just theoretical, but a lived reality in his ministry. The letter then deepens this Marian focus by connecting it to the practical work of mission. As Pope Francis writes, "We ask that our bodies find rest at the shrine of Our Lady," a poignant request that takes on new meaning today as we imagine his own body now resting in eternity, having passed on this Easter day, a day of resurrection that mirrors the spiritual rest he sought in Mary's presence. This line reveals his vision of mission as a journey that begins and ends with Mary, a cyclical process of prayer and action that ensures the Church remains oriented toward Christ. He specifically mentions the Paulina and Storta prayer branches of the Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre, groups dedicated to interceding for missionaries, and his call for their continued prayers underscores his belief that mission is not just about action, but about a spiritual foundation of prayer, a foundation he relied upon throughout his papacy, as seen in his daily habit of praying the Rosary, a practice he often encouraged in his audiences, urging the faithful to turn to Mary in times of trial. This Marian spirituality also reflects his broader theological vision of a Church that is maternal, nurturing, and inclusive, a vision he articulated in his 2013 apostolic exhortation Evangelii Gaudium, where he called for a Church that is a mother with an open heart, a theme that echoes in the letter's emphasis on Mary as the mother who guides the Church's mission, a mission he continued to champion even in his final days, as he celebrated the Easter Mass despite his declining health, embodying the letter's call to entrust all apostolic work to Mary's care. Moving to the second major theme, the letter's call for missionary zeal, Pope Francis writes, Pray for the missionaries facing hardship in places of war, poverty, and lack of religious freedom, a plea that reveals his deep concern for those who carry the gospel to the margins of society, a concern that was deeply personal, rooted in his own experiences as a priest in the slums of Buenos Aires, where he walked among the poor, sharing their struggles and bringing them the light of Christ, experiences that shaped his papacy and his understanding of mission as an act of solidarity with the suffering. This passage is not just a general prayer request, it's a specific directive to the faithful to support those on the front lines of evangelization, a directive that reflects his own commitment to the peripheries as seen in his 2015 visit to the Central African Republic, where he opened a holy door in a war-torn region, symbolizing hope amidst despair, or his 2023 letter to the people of Ukraine, where he called for peace and solidarity with those suffering in conflict. The letter's mention of war, poverty, and lack of religious freedom is a stark reminder of the challenges missionaries face, challenges Pope Francis understood intimately, having met with countless missionaries during his papacy, listening to their stories of persecution and hardship, and offering them encouragement to persevere. He often spoke of the martyrs of our time, those who risked their lives to spread the gospel. And this letter's call to pray for them is a continuation of that advocacy, a call he lived out until his final moments, as he used his last Easter Mass to pray for peace in conflict zones, his voice weak but his spirit unwavering, embodying the missionary zeal he championed in the letter. This call for missionary zeal is also deeply connected to his vision of a church that goes out to the margins, a vision he articulated throughout his papacy, most notably in his 2016 apostolic exhortation Amoris Laetitia, where he urged the church to be a field hospital for the wounded, a metaphor that resonates in the letter's focus on missionaries as healers of spiritual wounds in places of suffering. He writes, "We ask that you pray for those who have been entrusted with spreading the gospel in difficult circumstances," a line that highlights his understanding of mission as a collective effort, one that requires the support of the entire church through prayer and action. A collective effort he exemplified in his own life as he consistently reached out to the marginalized, from refugees in Lesbos to indigenous communities in the Amazon, always urging the church to be a presence of love in the most forgotten corners of the world. His passing on Easter Day, a day of new life, feels like a symbolic culmination of this missionary zeal, as if his final act of celebrating the resurrection was a message to the church to continue this work of bringing new life to those in darkness, a message that echoes the letter's call to never abandon the mission, no matter the cost. Finally, the letter culminates in a profound expression of humility, as Pope Francis writes, "Prepare my body to rest in a simple wooden coffin. Let my grave be marked only with the name Franciscus, for I am but a brother to all," a request that is not just a practical instruction, but a theological statement about his identity as a servant of God, echoing the humility of St. Francis of Assisi, whose name he chose as his own, a humility that defined his papacy and found its ultimate expression in his quiet passing on this Easter morning. This line reveals his vision of a church that is poor and for the poor, a vision he lived out from the moment he stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's in 2013, wearing a simple white cassock and asking the people to pray for him, to his decision to live in the modest Casa Santa Marta rather than the Apostolic Palace, a choice that shocked many but reflected his desire to be close to the people. The letter's emphasis on simplicity, seen in his request for a wooden coffin and a grave marked only with Franciscus, is a rejection of worldly power and a call for the church to return to its roots as a community of service. A call he embodied in countless ways, such as his annual washing of the feet of prisoners on Holy Thursday, a gesture that spoke louder than any encyclical about the kind of church he wanted to lead. This humility also connects to his broader teachings on synodality, a theme he emphasized in his 2021-2023 Synod on Synodality, where he called for a church that listens and walks together, a church of brothers and sisters rather than hierarchies, a vision that the letter's use of Franciscus encapsulates, a name that signifies brotherhood and simplicity, a name that now marks his eternal rest as he passed in the same unassuming way he led, surrounded not by grandeur, but by the love of those he served. The letter's humility is further underscored by his mention of the Paulina and Storta prayer branches, groups he praises for their quiet, behind-the-scenes work of intercession, a reminder that the church's mission is not about fame or recognition, but about humble service. A reminder he lived out in his final days, as he insisted on celebrating the Easter Mass despite his failing health, choosing to serve until the very end, his frail hands lifting the Eucharist in a final act of love. A moment that mirrors the letter's call for a church that serves without seeking glory. As we reflect on this theme, I see little Anna, the 10-year-old orphan girl Pope Francis once rescued from a refugee camp. Placing a single white lily on the steps of the square, a small, humble gesture that captures the spirit of the Franciscus he wanted to be, a brother to all, whose legacy of humility continues to inspire us, even as we mourn his passing on this day of resurrection, a day that reminds us that his humble service has now found its eternal reward in the presence of the Christ he served and the Mary he loved. As the sunlight grows brighter, illuminating St. Peter's Square, and the distant choir sings Ave Maria, echoing Pope Francis's devotion to the Virgin Mary, let us carry forward the lessons of his annual letter, its call to mission, its reliance on Mary's guidance, and its embrace of humility, knowing that his passing on this Easter day, a day of new life, reminds us that his light will never fade, but will continue to shine through our prayers, our service, and our love as he rests now in the eternal embrace of the mother he loved and the Christ he served. Forever our humble brother, Franciscus.